So, uh, first of all, Casey, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, sir. I'm glad to be here.
um, this might be very different to Effie's podcast. This is a bit more
Yeah.
all over the place, and which is which is what I like. And I tend to just go with the flow with a lot of stuff. It's kind of um my style. And but so walk us can you walk us through who have got us in their ears right now, who are listening to us. Can you tell us, Casey, about what happened and how it all transpired back 6.5 years ago with Ford?
Yeah. Well, Effie's pregnancy was, we thought, very normal. She was going and she was getting updates. She was always very small, had a small belly, and they repeatedly told her that, hey, that's just because you're a small person. She's just over 5 feet, and they were saying it's totally normal, nothing to be worried about until right before his due date. And then all of a sudden, she saw a new doctor, and she said, "You need to give birth now,
Wow. Okay.
absolutely right now." And so they admitted her, and we didn't really know what was going on. I was at work, and I get a call, "Hey, it's time, let's go." I didn't even really get the update at that point that the
Mm-hmm.
doctors are saying something is going on. Uh, um, but they pulled us in. They induced her. He was born on his due date. Born pretty small, 5 pounds 2 ounces, and uh, it was a weird experience in the hospital. They There seemed like there was a concerted effort to try and make us think that everything was fine. All the doctors said, "Oh, this is great. His APGAR score is perfect. Um, there's nothing wrong at all with your baby." And then they kind of shunted us off into a side room on the hospital that was covered in dust and clearly hadn't been used in a few years. And Ford couldn't latch. He couldn't drink. He wasn't putting on weight. We couldn't get him to stop crying. And uh, and they weren't terribly interested in that. They kind of just said, "He's fine. You're new parents. You're probably doing it wrong. Uh, we'll figure it out." And we eventually got him to the point where he wasn't admitted to the NICU. He probably should have been, uh, given his weight and his weight gain issues, but he wasn't, and we got to go home. And for about 4 months, Effie and I just dealt with it. We I would come home from work. I was just starting felony practice at that time. I'm a criminal prosecutor.
Right.
Um, Starting out my first felony trials and trying to figure out what the heck is going on with that whole world. And I would come back from that, and I'd walk in, and Ford would be crying, and he'd just be inconsolable. And poor Effie was, she was doing everything she possibly could. And I would grab Ford and I would give her a break, and I would, man, it's such a visceral image. I can still feel it.
Mm.
I would put him on my forearm, um, you know, belly down. His head would be by my elbow, and I would just kind of jiggle him and give him pats on the back, and I would walk him around the apartment, and that was the only thing in the world that would calm him down. And I would just do that for hours,
Wow.
for just as long as we could. And we would sit there, and it would take him at least an hour to try and get down a single bottle. And because he never latched for Effie,
Mm.
couldn't breastfeed. Um, and we went through that process, and finally it got to the point where it was clearly there was something wrong. And on Halloween, he was October 31st, he was admitted to the hospital with failure to thrive. And again, they didn't really have any answers. They said, well, let's set him up with an NG tube, just the tube that runs up the nose and down into the stomach.
Gotcha.
And we're going to get some weight on him. And as soon as he gets some weight on him, he'll be fine. Don't worry about it. Nothing in the world wrong with him. And sent us home without really a plan or anything. And he would throw up the NG tube about twice a day. And we'd have to reinsert it ourselves, which is...
You had to do it yourself.
Oh, yeah. We got real good at it. And it was not something that you ever really want to be really good at. It was...
Jeez, man.
Yeah.
Is that normal? Actually, I'm curious, because I'm just thinking, like, whether in Japan, whether they would even, like, yeah, I don't know what they would do here in Japan with that, but is that a normal situation in the States?
I don't know. It shouldn't be.
Yeah, I'm going to go with that as well. It shouldn't be, but maybe. Goodness knows.
Yeah. I mean, there are... I don't know what other people's experiences with NG tubes are. And if that child throws it up as much as Ford would do, he's always had bad reflux issues. So throwing up is something we've had to deal with for forever. But it was clearly traumatizing for him to have to do that. He would scream, he would cry. You could see he didn't know what was happening, because it does not feel good to have a nose or a tube run through your nose and down your throat. And we did the best that we could, and we just kept going with that. And he was putting on weight. But at some point, Effie and I just sat down and we said, well, what the heck is the plan? What's going on here? The doctors haven't told us anything. They haven't followed up. They haven't done anything to see what's going to happen with this kid. And he's putting on weight. He's kind of a little chunker at that point, because we got food down that boy's.
So that was a good thing. So you must have, I guess was there a side of you like, oh, this is kind of good. Like because weight is eating and weight, but not the way that you would want him to put on weight, right?
Yeah. Well, that was the thing, is the entire reason for the NG tube from the doctor's perspective, from what they told us, was he's going to put on weight, and that will make him stronger, and then he will be able to drink on his own. He'll start rolling over. He'll start hitting these milestones that he's supposed to, and it wasn't happening.
No.
So we reached back out to them. I did a little bit of research, found out you're not supposed to have an NG tube for an extended period of time. That's not a long-term solution. And we kind of followed back up with our doctors and said, hey, we need to know what is happening next here. And they said, oh yeah, that's right. We should figure out a long-term care plan. And he ended up getting a G tube, which is it's a surgery that he had to have.
Okay.
They go in and they cut about an inch long incision into the abdominal wall and the stomach wall, and they staple them together, and there's just a hole straight into his stomach. And they put a little tube in between them, and you hook up food, and it goes directly into his stomach. And
Casey,
yeah.
when they told you this, and when this operation, coming up to the operation and having the operation, can you what was going on? Can you if you think back to how you felt and how you thought about that situation, what was going on with you as the dad?
I mean, it was a lot. It was a lot trying to figure out what's going on. By nature, I think I tend to be a little bit of an optimist. I try not to take on more problems than are actually in front of me. And the way that kind of was manifesting at that point was, the idea that there could be something that is going to be a lifelong issue with my child was not something that my brain was able to process at that point. At that point, I was just going through this and going, okay, I need to get my boy taken care of.
Mm.
I don't know what the long-term issue is, but it's something that we're going to be able to address. And he is going to be able to come out the other side and live the normal life that we all expect for our children. It's not that it never occurred to me that disability could be a part of our boy's life or of our life, but it just never was something that I could process as reality until it was actually, until that die had been cast, and that was our road moving forward.
And that was about 16 months in, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, there are a million other steps in between, but eventually it was actually the eye doctor looked at Ford and saw what's called transillumination in his eye. It's basically light refracting around, and they said, oh, well, this must be this very particular type of albinism, because that's the only thing that's going to cause this transillumination. And Effie came home and she told me that this is what's happening with our boy. Our boy has albinism, and it's this super scary type, and she started getting really involved. And I kind of looked at it and I said, well, does albinism explain why he can't roll over? She said, no. Does it explain why he's not verbalizing anything yet? No. Does it explain why he hasn't hit all of these other milestones? And I said, well, that's not it then. I hear the doctors are telling you that's the only thing that can explain the transillumination. But that if I have to choose between the doctors being wrong and there being two hyper rare or unusual things going on with my boy, I'm guessing the doctors are wrong. But the good part of that was it did get us a full genetic workup, full exome test, and that came back and they showed us at that point what was our actual diagnosis. Again, you're exactly right. It was 16 months, and it was a hyper rare disease called CTNNB1 syndrome, just named after the gene.
Right. Okay. So that's what I wondered where these names come from. So it's essentially named after the gene. You say that it's right. Okay.
Yeah.
See, I'm still learning, mate. I'm still learning about this. This is like, as probably like other people who are listening to this who don't know about it, like we're all learning, man, and that's a good thing.
I mean, I think we're all learning about things that we haven't been exposed to, and rare disease is kind of by definition rare. So, I expect people to be learning about that.
Yeah.
I'm just glad that people are willing to.
Yeah, I think so. Wow, this is interesting. Okay. So I want to like where do we go from here? Let's talk about kind of I want to dive right in here. I feel like I can ask this question here, Casey, because of what you've kind of told me so far. With all this kind of happening 16 months in and kind of, and now he's almost like 6.5. I think his birthday's in July. Is that right?
June 30th.
Yeah. June 30th. Oh, okay. Oh, so close.
So close.
So close. So you're getting close to that 7 months in. I talk about here. I like to kind of go into the kind of the acceptance and understanding of kind of the world that we live in as dads. And I for basically 11 years, Casey, is that so many kind of things went on in my 11 years that I think my acceptance kind of started to morph into something after 11 years. Like for 11 of those years, I just threw myself into work. I just, especially the kind of the latter half of it, the latter half of those 11 years. And so I suppose my question to you, Casey, is like, how has acceptance kind of gone for you in your journey of what's in front of you today? How's that looked like? Has it changed in any way? Has it morphed? Is it still going? Because yeah, how does it look like for you with this as his dad?
Yeah, it's absolutely still going. It's a daily process. Um, and I just try and keep my mind open to whatever is going to come to us. CTNNB1 syndrome, when he was diagnosed, there were about, I think, 35 or so people in the world that had been diagnosed with it. We're up to 200 or 300 now. So it's getting diagnosed significantly quicker now, and we're starting to get a larger body of knowledge about it. But the oldest children that we have that have been diagnosed with CTNNB1 syndrome are early mid 20s. So we really don't know what's going to be Ford's long-term path.
Mm.
And it is a very wide spectrum. It's a very wide spectrum. Some of the kids can walk, some can talk, some function almost normally in a lot of different ways. And then on the other end of the spectrum, Ford can't walk, Ford can't talk. He tries everything, but he can't toilet himself. All those sorts of things that you kind of have to deal with. So he's pretty far over there on the spectrum. Another kind of just left field piece of it was he also, when they did the full exome test, they found that he was positive for the BRCA1 gene, which means that cancers is something that we have to watch for in our future. That's not normally associated with CTNNB1. And that's kind of my long-winded way of saying that I can't accept what's coming in the future because we don't know what it is. So I try to accept what happens. And I try and accept Ford as we have him, and accept him as he changes. And he does change.
Mm.
He's the sweetest little guy in the whole world. He is just full of laughing and love. And that's what we really focus on. And that's the biggest part of my acceptance.
Mm.
Is it's not to me so much about who he's going to become or the life that he is going to live, because I don't have a lot of knowledge or control over that at this point. But it is about the life that he's living today.
Mm.
And what I can do to make that life better, and make sure he knows that he is loved,
Mm.
and that he is cherished for who he is.
How focusing on to, like you say, obviously as parents, we put a lot of energy and effort and focus onto our kids, right? Even
Yeah.
in a typical parenting role, right?
Yeah.
When we have children who don't fit into that typical category, um, we as dads, because we can have that conversation with dads, so we can talk about those dad things that we have to deal with, because they're different from mums. We aren't
Yeah.
like, and I think I've kind of realized in the last really couple of years to kind of start to understand how I am, and how I am, and kind of what I'd like to really be as dad, and that's kind of really, you know, changed how I operate on a daily basis now. I thought I was good before. I was like, you know, but I am I see myself as kind of very different to how I was.
Sure.
But we kind of, the typical, I feel that some dads want to try and um, they want to try and like fix the problem. They want to solve the problem.
Have
Um,
you been talking to Effie?
they want to, you know what I'm saying, right? Is we feel like we have to, like we gotta sort this out. We gotta be, you know,
Yeah.
that's kind of like it's part of some like yeah part of kind of what we are. Maybe some of us are anyway.
Oh yeah. It's a big
Um,
part, I think.
what like how's that kind of played out for you? Like, what's with trying to be like, you know, the like I want to fix this and I want to, you know,
Yeah, that's a tough piece of this whole thing.
mm,
And I think it really I've had to work on and be very intentional about what fixing it looks like, because there's
mm,
no fixing a broken strand of genetics at this point. You know, there's a lot of work that a lot of amazing people are doing to try to fix that for future generations and future kids, um, so that this can be addressed and these kids can live the fullest life possible. And that's wonderful, but that's not my focus. My focus is forward,
mm,
and fixing it, fixing whatever it is, to me, is just being the best dad that I can forward.
yeah,
Um, and that can be hard. That can be hard to let go of the idea that I can fix everything, because you're right. That is a very big piece, I think, of a lot of men's psychology, um, and that is definitely something that I've dealt with uh, throughout my life, where I will try to fix problems, and that's not the issue in front of me. Um,
mm,
Trying to fix it uh, in terms of finding a solution so that it is um, mended in some way isn't actually, it's not the actual problem in front of you.
I love this.
Yeah, it's and so that's something that I've come to realize over the years is, um, you have to actually know what the problem in front of you is,
Mm,
or you're going to be fixing the wrong thing. And
mm,
sometimes fixing the right thing is, it requires an entirely different approach to it. And rare disease is absolutely that sort of thing.
mm,
Uh, I'm not going to fix the disability. I can approach how I parent my child, uh, from a different, um, an individual perspective, uh, that's individual to forward.
yeah.
Uh,
Can we go? Can we talk about that? Because I think
yeah,
what I love about this is exactly what I like to talk about, and I'd love to go a little bit deeper with you on this
yeah,
as if you can, if we can, because it is something that I think that is at the core and the root of like what makes us dads like the dads that we want to be, basically.
yeah,
Um, and I it's a tricky one because um I think there are some dads that just they struggle a lot with these situations. They struggle a
mm-hmm.
lot with um, what is in front of them, and they struggle genuinely perhaps with parenting as well. But then you throw in so many more unknowns.
Yep,
Um, is that uh, we don't quite know where to position ourselves in this, and you know we're like, what do we do? And when men are, I thought I was good. I thought, like I said before, I thought I was, you know, I thought I was a nice guy. I thought I was
yeah.
compassionate. I thought I had, you know, you know, I was just ticking all those boxes. Well, no, no, I wasn't. Um, and I was just, I, I wasn't dealing with the biggest issue, which was me,
Sure.
like myself, kind of working on myself to
Always is the
be,
biggest issue.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I love to talk about this because I feel this is just such a plays a humongous part into how we are,
Hmm.
how we travel through our days, our weeks, our months, whatever. Because if we can be honest with ourselves as to how we feel,
Yeah.
um, then we can actually be so much more real and present with our kids,
Yep.
because the challenges we have, and it, are way beyond our control, way beyond
Right.
our control. Um, how what's it look like for you with that journey of trying to kind of work out where you want to be as dad, and how has that kind of transitioned? Like, if you look at yourself,
Yeah.
like before Ford came along, he's shaking his head to 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 today.
Yeah.
How has Ford kind of, what does it look like, and can you walk us through that?
Yeah. Well, it's a lot. I
Mm,
think obviously anytime somebody becomes a father or parent, it's going to change you. And Steve, something that you said stuck out to me. You said that you thought you were a nice guy and you thought you were good and all of that, and you were wrong. Um, I didn't know you until today.
mm,
This is the first time I've gotten to
yeah.
talk to you, but I think it's important to point out, um, you know, maybe that's true. But my guess is that it's not. That you were a nice guy. That you were good. But the process that we go through helps us to grow and change in ways that we can always make ourselves better. And I think it's important to acknowledge, hey, who I was before I had Ford, before I had one of these kids, um, isn't isn't who I am now. And I feel like I've grown a lot and I've gotten better in a lot of ways. But you can still acknowledge that you're doing the best that you can at all points in your life, and giving that grace to yourself, I think, is important, because it's
Mm,
easy to beat yourself up, and it is. I think it is for all of us. It is for me. Um, and one of the big pieces for that, for me, is that I just didn't think about disability before Ford. I just didn't. No one in my life was dealing with disability. Certainly, no one in my life was dealing with rare disease. Um, and it's not like I was rude or mean or
no.
dismissive to anybody with disability, but it wasn't something that really mattered to me.
Mm,
Um, and boy, having a kid like Ford will open your eyes to that, about how harmful uh, that neutral sort of behavior can be, where you're just comfortable living in your own nice little world, and you don't have to deal with it, and so you don't. And everybody else out there that does have to deal with it, is going through a lot of stuff.
mm,
So the biggest thing that I would say that Ford has done for me personally is he's made me more empathetic.
mm,
Uh, uh, Specifically towards the people with disability and the caregivers and everybody associated with it, but also in a more holistic sense as well, because it opened my eyes to the fact that, man, there's just stuff I wasn't thinking about. The experiences of other people that are different than you, that have lived a different life than you, uh, are important to understand, um, and acknowledge in a way that takes into account that you can't fully understand what they're going through, and that you need to listen to their voices, you need to listen to um, their experiences, uh, and really give it the weight that it deserves. So that's how I would say that Ford has changed me. uh, Empathy is always something that's been important to me. It's always something I've tried to be intentional about, and he has um, shown me how to do that in a way that I never could have understood without him.
when did that, like, I can relate to that. was there a point that you can kind of pin it back to where that was like that empathy flower started to kind of grow when you were like, is there anything you can kind of, I'm just trying to think myself actually when for me, it's probably about a year and a half ago, I think, like when I started to really go a bit deeper into myself and actually understand kind of where I was as dad, and kind of, I think it basically what it for me it looked like is that I had to look at myself. I need to be more empathetic towards myself, because if I can't be empathetic towards how I was traveling through the day and looking after myself, I think it came back to more the fact of actually I needed to just take care of myself, because self-care was not even on my radar. It was just like, so what for you?
Well, I mean, I think that's a really interesting and a fascinating point, and I think it's something that really gets lost when we do talk about empathy and we talk about those things, is empathy for yourself. It really, really gets lost, and I think it just, especially by rare disease caregivers and disability caregivers, and man, we're all just so caught up in doing what we need to for our jobs and our kids, and it's so easy to just say, you know what, the last thing that I need is to try and make some room for myself. I don't have the room to do it. And when you do that, you don't realize that you are diminishing what you give to everything else in your life. So I think that's a really, really important point. In terms of when it started to really become a big thing for me and really become more conscious in relation to Ford, you know, I'm really fortunate that I'm not in this alone, and the partner I have is incredible. Not only as a normal human being, but specifically within the rare disease world. You know, Effie is my wife. She's got her podcast, Once Upon a Gene, and she is not like I am in terms of I'm going to look at today and I'm going to look at the problem that's in front of me. She sees all the problems, the ones that are there and the ones that aren't, and the ones that might be there, and she sees them all. And so she's really looking into the future, and she's really looking at how she can give back and shape this community and help others. And watching her go through that process, when she really started to kind of be like, hey, we're not just sitting here taking care of our own kid. We're not isolated in this tiny little rock where we're the only ones that are going through this. This is a huge community. It doesn't feel like it because we all feel so individually isolated, but together the disability community is just massive. And once she started to push that forward, once she really started to make that part of her life mission, then it became, you know, it's something that you think about more. And it started to open up that book for me and make me think about it more, and open up the larger thoughts of empathy towards not only Ford, but the disability community as a whole.
How do you do about kind of self-care, right? Just before and what is that like? How is that? What does it look like for you to kind of to look after yourself, give yourself some time, give yourself some space, because it is ridiculously important for us, because we work as for me, work is not a like, it's not my time. It's not, you know, it's work. I know a lot of people do say that work does that for them, and maybe it does. But what does it look like for you, kind of to give yourself? What do you do to kind of just, you know, or do, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's I mean, I try and be as good about it as I can. One, I am lucky in that I have a career that I'm very passionate about, and it is stressful and has its own issues, but it also fills my cup in a different sort of way um, when I'm able to help people through my work. Um, that is absolutely a form of self care to me.
Mm,
Um, it it absolutely is. You know,
yeah.
it's as a trial attorney, I could probably, and Effie has reminded me of this just a few times. I could probably go into private practice and maybe increase the pay grade that I'm getting and provide more for Ford and all of that. Um, but for me, it's important to have a career that I love
Mm,
and that I feel very passionately about. So that's part of it for me. Um, but that can't be everything. That cannot be everything. I would burn out so dang quick if it was just work and come home and give everyone else a break and be a dad and all that stuff. I would just burn out. So the things that I will do is I will carve out time. You know, when Effie has a girls' night or when she wants to go to bed early or something. I'll stay up and I'll read a book or I'll play a game. Uh, I'll sit there and just have completely brain dead me time.
mm,
And I'll try and do that. I try and do it at least once a week. It doesn't usually happen. It's probably more like a couple times a month that I get to do that. Just depending on how things are going. Uh, I try and make time to go and hang out with friends. Again, usually happens once, maybe twice a month. Um, but I carve out a night and it's me. I'm gone.
mm.
I'm out. Love you,
How
darling.
good is that when you do it?
Oh my God, it's so good. I actually just did that last night.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, it was so nice. You just go and you just get to be completely yourself,
Mm.
um, and do whatever the heck makes you feel good. Just I play games with my buddies, and it's a good deal. And then the last thing that I'll do is, uh, and this happens far less than I would like it to, is occasionally I'll just carve out a day for myself, and I'll go on a hike, and I'll take my book, and I find I live in the Pacific Northwest around Seattle, and I'll just find a place and go get lost in the woods, and it's beautiful. Um, so I love doing that.
That sounds really good actually. That
Yeah.
'cause I think there has to be sorry, my dog has decided she wants to come and sit on me.
Yeah.
um uh yeah, there has to be um I think an array of things that we do,
Mm-hmm.
and it's it's really important because it allows us to top that cup up. It allows us to
Mm-hmm.
feel like we can actually be human. But that's us giving ourselves some real love and some compassion to ourselves, because we are putting that straight back to our kids
Yeah,
and our wives.
absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
uh, just, and we can't do that if we are not looking after ourselves.
I completely agree. I mean, at the end of the day, one of the general thing that we are all trying to do as parents is we are trying to teach our children how to have a life that is going to make them happy.
Mm,
We want them to have a happy life, no matter what it is that they end up doing, how they get there.
mm,
And if we ourselves are not happy and we're not showing them that we're happy and we're not kind of being that example, how the heck can we expect them to live up to that and be able to learn how to do that themselves? They're going to model themselves after their parents.
the one of my guests, he said to me um, about so a fantastic phrase, and he I think it was one of his friends that said it, or was himself anyway. When you get on a plane and they do the announcement, they go through like the oxygen mask, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they say, please put, if you got children, put your mask on first, and then your
Mm-hmm.
children, right?
Yep.
And he said this to me, and I was like, this is so true because we can't we can't help our kids unless we give ourselves that oxygen first, right?
Absolutely.
They can't reach up and grab that oxygen mask. Like it's just not going to happen, right?
That's
So
right.
we we need to remember that, and it stays with me, I think it's it's kind of really changed my perception again, and kind of, well,
Mm-hmm.
not changed my perception, but it certainly made me much more aware again as to kind of where I need to be, and to be the dad I want to be with Jamie and Joshua,
Yeah.
and also to be the husband to my wife as well, right? And
Yep.
the boss to my staff, and whoever else kind of walks through my world. Um, um, is that I've got to put that oxygen mask on, and sometimes and, and I used to wrestle with a bit of guilt on this though. I used to
Mm-hmm.
wrestle with guilt because I felt like if I was doing it, um, is that um, I was, putting other people in kind of a situation, or I would, you know, I just felt guilty for not being there for for Jamie or for my
Yep.
wife in that situation. Um, do you have anything like that? Do you have that kind of? Have you had any?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's so hard to let go of that and not feel like you're being selfish. Uh, when you're like, "Hey, I'm going to leave you with the kids." That's a big one for me is, my kids, we also have a 4-year-old little daughter. She's amazing and wonderful. They're her and Ford are both resilient. They'll call me, I'll sing Ford his goodnight songs. I sing to him every night. Um, and that's it. They're good. But the person that it really puts stress on when I'm gone is Effie.
Mm.
She's the one that has to get them ready for bed and to deal with meltdowns and all of that. And it is so hard to not feel selfish for doing that
Mm.
to her. And for me, one of the big reasons, the big ways that I get myself to let go of that is if I do this, if I take my time, I go out, I hang out with my friends, and I spend the entire time worrying about the fact that I've left Effie there alone,
Mm.
and that it's putting stress on her. I have now wasted what she has given me. I have
Ah, that's an
in
interesting.
yeah,
That's an
in
interesting take on it, actually. Yeah,
yeah, instead of filling my own cup so that I
yeah,
can come back and I can be the husband and the father that I need to be, I have now instead put more stress on myself. I
yeah.
have diminished my capacity to do that more. And at the same time, I've put stress on her. And I'm not willing to do. So if I'm going to take time for myself, I do everything I can to let myself let go of that guilt and enjoy it and accept the gift uh, that Effie is giving me to let
Mm.
me do that, um, and really maximize what it's supposed to do.
Yeah,
That's, fill me back up, get me ready to go.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's so important. Um,
Mm-hmm.
what what's your like? How have you found finding dads to kind of connect with, to relate to? Um, what's that been like for you?
Yeah. I've always been a little bit more of an introvert anyway. So Effie has made pushes to get me together in dad's groups and stuff like that. And it's not something that I have had be a part of my journey at this point, really connecting with groups of other dads. I think it's really important for some people.
Mm.
And I am open to the idea that someday it might become very important to me. But um, right now I'm
Can I
just,
ask why, Casey? Because I,
yeah,
I, I, I do. I think everyone has their own reasons why this is, and I was like that for 11 years, Casey.
sure.
So I just pushed away people
Mm,
who wanted to perhaps help me. I didn't know how to kind of.
yeah.
I felt like let's try and put this into words. Maybe I'll throw it back to you because I'll just screw this one up. So let's just throw it back to you. Can you, I, what is it that you? Because I think there's a lot of
Yeah.
dads who are like you in that sense,
Hmm.
who don't
Yeah.
um, get into those groups, or they get into groups for certain aspects and then they leave the groups and things like this. But um, yeah, what?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's definitely something that I've thought about because it's something that certainly that Effie has encouraged me to be a part of, and that's why I try and keep an open mind with it. But for right now, I don't know if it's just that I don't have the bandwidth to really make
Mm,
those new connections, or if it's because it takes time and it takes um, an emotional investment
mm,
to really get to know somebody well enough uh, to really be truly friends with them. Uh, and obviously that can be a wonderful thing, and making new friends is great. But it's not something that has been something that I personally need right now.
mm,
I have a lot of really wonderful friends, and when I spend time with them, um, I'm not usually thinking about, uh, all the difficulties and things that we're dealing with back home. Um, and that might be something that eventually I do need to talk about with other people, especially as Ford encounters other challenges, and I need some advice on how to deal with that. Um, but right now, it's just not something that I feel like I have personally needed. And I say that with some caution because I think that you're right. A lot of people really, 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 really do need it, and they are just not open to it. And that's a dangerous thing. That's a very dangerous thing when you do need that sort of connection and you do need that sort of support, and you're not allowing it in your life. So by saying that it's not something that's been a part of my journey, I'm not saying that you're all fine, suck it up, you don't need it. That's not it. That's not it at all.
no,
It's just not something that I've needed.
yeah. Uh, um, I appreciate that. Thanks for sharing that because I think there'll be dads who are listening and mums as well who will listening to that and be like, yeah, I can kind of relate to that. Like, um, I feel it's something like as dads we um trying to reach out to other dads and to
Mm-hmm.
kind of build that kind of community of like, well, that not community, but or maybe it is, of other dads that are on the same kind of who live in that world. They live in Holland. They don't live in Italy.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
um, and I think having that mix of like dads who live in each of those countries is really important. And I didn't understand that importance, Casey, for 11
Yeah.
years. I um and also like when Jamie was born back in um 2007. Goodness me, my wife's going to kill me on this one. 2008. Um, goodness me, it's just
2000.
2000. Yeah, like um uh is that there really wasn't the kind of
Yeah.
the like Facebook wasn't really around, and well, it was around, but it wasn't in that kind of form of, groups and that kind of stuff. It was really different.
Mm-hmm.
No, I was on Facebook, and I was in that kind of world of like things where, Jamie was in and out of hospital operations, you know, um, and I didn't know I had the trauma, Casey.
Yeah.
I didn't know I had it, man, until
Mm-hmm.
I sat down um, with a counselor, and a
Yeah.
therapist, and I
Mm-hmm.
talked about it. And
Yeah.
I didn't know how much trauma I had kind of just sitting there,
Mm-hmm.
um, because we just pack it away, and
Yep.
because we think and again, it comes back to the thing that I didn't even know I had it.
Right.
And I feel that, so there are dads out there, there are dads who, um, not so much in denial. I don't think it's denial. I think it's just they just don't even know. They actually,
Sure.
because the work, they focus on their work. They focus on to trying to be what they want to be.
Mm-hmm.
But there's actually, you know, it may not be trauma from, and even grief as well from, what's happened in their world with this child coming into their lives that they didn't, expect to be where they thought they're going to be or wanted to be. Um, but there's so much there. Then I think,
Mm-hmm.
um, I found it really hard. Actually, my parents were hounding me to kind of, have you gone to therapy? Have you done your counselor yet? And I was like,
Yeah.
um, yeah, and I was just pushing it away. I was just pushing it
Yeah.
away, and I was just delaying and delaying and delaying.
Well.
Um, and then I finally did it. And my first ever session, um, I like was this guy. He was online with a guy in Australia, and I just, finished the session. I was a wreck. I was just
Mm-hmm.
so emotional. Um, and I thought, what the heck is going on, man? Like, this is just like, I did not think that this was what counseling was. I didn't,
Right.
my image of, I thought that, maybe one session is going to, sort it all out and I'll be all good and whatever. No, 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 no. Like, it was for me, you know, it's proved very different.
Mm-hmm.
But we are not so great at talking about, men are not so great about talking about these things. And we're
Yep.
also not so good about hearing them either. I think that
Completely agree.
we think that if we're going to hear it and listen to it, it might, it's, I don't know, like, it makes us, I don't know. How do you,
Well, I think there's a perception that seeking therapy
mm,
is somehow an acknowledgement of weakness,
yeah,
and that's something that is difficult for a lot of men to
mm,
accept. To accept that I am weak, they feel like if there is weakness that they need to seek help for, that it is a failure.
mm,
Um, and to me, that just simply couldn't be farther from the truth.
yeah,
The honest weakness there is if you are experiencing something and you need help
mm,
and you
yeah,
don't do it because of your own stubbornness, because of your own need to feel strong and put on a strong front to others, that's the weakness.
yeah,
And that's the failure, and that's okay. I think a lot of people fail in a lot of different ways every day, and it's like I said, give grace to yourself. The fact that you weren't strong enough to go get counseling today doesn't mean that you can't be strong enough tomorrow.
yeah,
Um, uh, never, people shouldn't hold on to that perception, the idea that they're putting out there. They're saying, "Nope, I have said that I do not need counseling, and I never will need counseling, and I think counseling is BS, and therefore I'm never going to get it."
mm,
If at some point you get to a point in your life where you're like, "Man, I think maybe I should give this a shot," that's strength, uh, and that's something that more people should take advantage of.
absolutely. It's a tough one, isn't it? Because I think for me, it was like talking to someone who I just telling someone and talking to someone about the shit that was going on in my world.
Yeah.
I was like, they're not going to understand me. They're not. They're like, how on earth are they going to like empathize with my world? And I don't also like. Then it was like, my, uh, I use the word toxic masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't like that word now, but it's
Oh,
I don't know. I actually I have no problem using it, but um the I think I kind of felt that I was just wasting my time. This was not going to telling someone how
yeah.
is this going to help me? How, get like and shit, man, boy was I wrong.
Yeah.
I couldn't have been more wrong, and it's um and I think it's not going to kill you to try, right? If there's guys out there who are listening and they're like, oh man,
Yep.
like it's not going to kill them.
Well, that's the thing is it's not going to kill you to try. It might not to,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah,
Um, Even if it's not actual death, man, that can just drain your whole life.
yeah,
If you need help and you don't get it, yeah,
yeah,
that's an easy choice to make, or it should be.
yeah,
It's not, but it should be.
yeah. Wow. Okay. What a great chat, man. Okay, this is fantastic. I love it. Um, so what kind of you kind of talked a little bit about kind of the future, how you kind of
Yeah.
focus on to kind of now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, is there any like I've kind of when I think about the future, with Jamie,
Mm-hmm.
um, I start to get even just him. He's in junior high, and I think about him going to high school.
Yeah.
Um, Getting into high school. Can he even get into high school?
Right.
What's it going to look like for him? For us, for me, how's it going to affect my, from a works perspective? Like, what am I going to like? Holy shit! Just you know,
Yeah.
um, and then after that, what happens after that? And you know, that's something that I tend to not think about so much because I
Mm-hmm.
just it's so far. I got to just I try and focus on to kind of what's going on now.
Yeah.
But that's probably one of the fears that I'll just say it's a fear. It's a fear and a concern. It's a worry, whatever we want to label it as. But what's yours?
Oh man. There are so many.
Mm,
There are so many different fears and concerns that we have. I already mentioned that BRCA1 is a part of our potential future.
yeah.
That's the big scary boogeyman that
Yep.
Effie and I honestly we don't even talk about it.
Mm.
We almost never mention it, but we are very aware that it is present.
It's like the
Um,
elephant in the room, I guess.
yep, like we're so in a sort of interesting way, we kind of hope that our journey continues on the path that it is. That all of
Mm,
a sudden we don't get this huge curveball that is a little too scary to actually think about. Um, so that's one. I think calling it a fear is absolutely legitimate. It's a huge fear for us. Another really big one for us is CTNNB1, the gene, is on the Wnt pathway, which is commonly associated with autism. And Ford technically does have an ASD diagnosis. Um, and we see some of those behaviors. And that is part of the spectrum for CTNNB1 is some kids show more autistic behaviors and they show some of the more things that are commonly associated with some of the behavioral or sensory problems that can arise with kids with ASD or with just people with ASD, even at
mm,
past the time that they're kids. Um, some of the self harm, that sort of thing. Uh, And that pops up for kids with CTNNB1, where they will hit their heads against a wall, they'll bite themselves, they will sometimes, when you try and intervene, that violence can be transferred onto the caregiver, um, can manifest in ways that are destructive to property, throwing things across the room, throwing things at TVs, all of that sort of stuff. And I think for Effie and I, always the huge silver lining in this whole process is that Ford exhibits joy in a way that no other person that is not on, no other person living in Italy understands the beauty of Holland. They don't get it. They can't.
Yeah.
And having that taken away from us, where the joy that Ford shows, that's so unique, that's so beautiful, and being replaced by some of those more destructive, angry, frustrated behaviors, that's terrifying. That's terrifying, and it's something. It can happen later on as kids hit puberty with CTNNB1, and we're just hoping that's not part of the spectrum that Ford experiences for us. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, man.
Yeah.
It's a very real, isn't it? It's a very real thing.
Oh yeah.
And I, Jamie's now 14, turning 15 in April, and his hormones are kind of kicking in, and and when he gets, he has anxiety with school and tests, and they got like tests going on now, and he picks up all the vibes from everyone. Also, like, he doesn't like sitting there in silence and having to kind of, it's very hard for him to do that, like with his, I think it's more the kind of the autistic side of him, and that, but it's I used to really struggle. I think I struggled a lot more with his physical side than what I do now. He would kind of, he used to I remember actually, with food, he used to, if something was not, it was just, you'd cook a meal, put it down in front of him, and then he would just go ape shit because it was just hot, and his so sensory, he would, scream, and then he would hit, like, just swipe the table. So if we had gone out, it would, like,
so hard.
It was really tough, and thankfully, for us, it's got a lot better. And but he used to, he would do all these things, swipe it off. He would bang his head, like literally headbutt the table. And it was just, you just never knew what was going to happen, basically, in these situations. But he has improved, but he can be very physically violent, and when he gets upset and angry.
It's just so hard. That gets exactly back to what we were talking about earlier, with the idea that we want to fix things, and watching your child go through that. What do you do? How do you reach out, and how do you fix that sort of issue when it's happening? It just, I think it's just an electric jolt to the system. As a parent to sit there and as a father to sit there and watch this happening with your kid, and every instinct, everything we've been taught up until the point that we actually entered the situation that we're in, is that we're supposed to teach our children how to behave. We're supposed to
Yeah, yeah.
teach them, that's not acceptable behavior.
Mm,
And shoving that instinct down,
mm.
and then actually trying to just deal with your child who is going through something really awful for them is so hard, and it makes you feel like a failure on so many levels. It's brutal. So I'm glad to hear that Jamie is doing better with that now.
He is in essence, yeah. There's um yes, we're kind of fortunate that it's kind of changed. I mean, there are moments where he still gets angry and upset, and I think even this
Sure.
morning he got like, he was like, I think something was a bit too hot from again, but he used to hit like 100, boom, like,
Yep.
now he kind of it he's able to regulate himself a little bit more. So he was,
That's great.
like he was about to hit the table and knock the milk over and all that kind of stuff, and that kind of didn't happen. So I was like, okay, I'll just take it away, right? And he was like,
Right.
no, 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 no. He's like, yeah, he wanted the bowl in front of him. He wanted to eat. He was hungry. It was like, I'm like, okay, well then, like that's cool. Then blow your food, because he can blow his food. I'm like, blow
Yeah.
your food, dude. Like this is all, like just, and he wants me
Yep.
to fan his food. I'm like, okay, well I can fan it, but I've also got to eat as well, mate. So I'm like trying
Yeah.
to fan and
Yep.
eat, and you know, um, but it comes back to that thing though, doesn't it? It comes back to,
Yeah.
as a dad, we have to, and as mums as well, is that we have to be in that headspace, right,
Mhm.
to be able to deal with these shitty situations that we are in, because that's like unbelievably important. And
Oh yeah.
I used to feel myself just go like, when he would, have a moment, a meltdown, he would get angry, or I would get angry, and then that would like set
Yep.
him off.
That's it's a entirely human reaction.
Mm,
Someone gets angry, someone gets aggressive with you. It's completely normal to have those same responses yourself. Uh, and you asked me earlier what how I've changed since having Ford, and I answered with empathy. That's the other piece of it. Is my
mm.
God, I am so much more patient as a human being now than I ever thought that I would have to be. you you get that anger, you get that frustration thrown in your face, and it is a skill to push down
How do you do
the
it? How do you do it?
oh hell, I don't know.
What?
Practice.
But what is it? What, like? Let's talk about this, because I think this is so important, and I'm going to try and share mine, and then maybe like kind of, because what I do is I
Yeah.
used to just feel it going, like my react, like I'd get pissed off. I get really pissed off that he had like
Mm-hmm.
thrown something, and my anger would go up
Mm-hmm.
instantaneously like this. It would just rocket, right? And I would let it, I wasn't able to bring it down.
Yeah.
I now I'm able to, I'm much more aware of that. I've made myself aware that, like, when I feel myself go up, okay, that's okay. I can go up, but sure as shit, I got to bring it down.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I'm the only one myself can bring that down. Like,
Yep.
and it's actually, it takes a conscious decision, a conscious mental effort to bring it back down. But when I do, I'm like, holy shit, like that situation just, you know, like it would have been so much different and so much more uh, aggressive or high volume or
Absolutely.
whatever and it was like that you know, for many, many years.
Well, it's a skill that a lot of people never ever master.
Mm,
That they are never able to bring themselves back down, and that's probably at least in part because they don't have to in the way a parent or a caregiver has to with dealing with someone with disability.
mm,
Because you're right. If you don't bring yourself back down, I think the one of the pieces that gets lost in that is it's natural for us to respond with anger and frustration and all of that when we see that get thrown in our face by the kiddo. Uh, but it is also natural for your kiddo to respond with increased aggression and
mm,
anger and all of that when they see that from you.
yeah.
So if you don't cut that off, at that first step, they show anger, they show aggression, and you show the same thing back, you're going to spiral
Yeah.
with
Yep.
with both of you just pinging off of each other, and it's not helpful.
Not at
It's
all.
not helpful. So that's part of what it is for me. Is it's a conscious thought process where I understand that an angry response does not achieve the results that I want.
Hmm.
And I would I would very much like to resolve this in a way that is going to make everybody happy.
Yeah.
And if how I do that is by taking a breath and making eye contact, um, and getting him to take a breath, great. If that works, perfect. If I need to give him space, or if I need to figure out what it is that frustrated him and resolve that issue, that's going to take less time, and it is going to make everybody happier
Yeah.
in the end. So yeah, it's a conscious choice. It's thinking about what result you want to achieve here, um, and and just also, man, I don't want to be that sort of dad. I don't want to
Yeah.
be angry with my kids.
Yeah.
I just don't. I don't want to be that sort of husband.
No.
Um, and that's the other piece of it is sometimes, like as much practice as we get, as much as patient as you can be, sometimes I can't push it down. I can't push it down right
Mm.
away. And I'm really fortunate to have an amazing partner with Effie, and if I need to, I can disconnect, I can
Mm.
disengage. I go, babe, I need you to take over.
Yeah. And
I
I
need you
think
to deal
that's
with them.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And knowing when to make that call and say, okay, I need to give myself a moment to calm down
Yeah.
is important. So
And I think
yeah,
that's a
that's
good. And uh, I, I'm so with you on this because I think that, um, again, dads, we kind of feel like we, it's a sign of, we feel it's a sign of weakness if we just, I mean, like, I'm out and like you
yep,
deal with this, like, and it's like, no, it's not, because like sometimes we just cannot deal with it.
yeah,
And we're not in the right headspace. We've had a tough day at work. We've got, you know, shit's going on in our day or whatever, like, and we're not in that good headspace to deal with it. And you're right. You're unable to bring it yourself down. And so if there is someone there to be like, you know, like our amazing rock star wives, because
yep.
I also have a rock star wife that just, you know, I feel so inferior to her a lot of the time.
I
Um,
know that feeling.
and but I have to remind myself. I'll come back to the thing in a minute, but I have to remind myself that I am enough, and
Right.
I am enough as to who I am, but I can always do more,
Mm-hmm.
and keep learning and all that. But the getting, um, passing it on to if my wife and say, I'm sorry, can you just deal with this because I don't think I've got it in me right now, or I'm going out for a walk. I've done that.
Yeah.
I don't know, and I've done that a couple of times. So I'm like, I just got to go out because I just need to clear my head because I'm just
Yep.
not in that good space. And I'll come back and I'm you know, I'm a little bit better. I'm like, okay, cool. I think I can. And the situation is sorted itself out as well. She's you know been a rock star. She just you know, and
Mm-hmm.
she's tackled it from you know a calm angle, whereas I can't tackle it from a calm angle, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, just that change in scenery, the change in
mm,
perspective is sometimes what the kid needs too.
yeah,
And it's important to, um, to be open to having that be a two-way street.
yeah,
Because Effie absolutely has the same stuff. Sometimes Ford will just smack one of us in the face or something. Not from anger, but just because it's one of his weird ticks. And man, that'll piss you off quick.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
just nothing like getting smacked in the face for nothing to piss you off.
yeah.
Um, and sometimes she'll need to just be like, babe, you this one's on you.
You're in the
And
ring.
exactly. I tag in
Yeah,
and I'm ready to go.
yeah,
So it has to be a two-way street. You have to support each other as best you can. Not everybody has that support, and
yeah,
Godspeed to those of you who are going it alone. I,
yeah.
I mean,
It's
you figure out different coping mechanisms, but you got
yeah,
to do it.
yeah. Okay. Um, what is what would you say? Hang on, let me just my screen here because I got my questions on my screen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what is what are 4 words that
Mm.
sum up your life as Ford's dad?
Boy, that's a tough one. I think we've talked about a lot of them.
Yeah,
Um,
4 different words. That
yeah,
kind
no,
of
I'm
just.
I'm trying. I've got five.
Oh, you can
I've
do
got
5 if you
five.
got 5. That's good.
And I'm trying to. Yeah, it's I would say it's love, joy, empathy, patience, and struggle.
Mm,
Um, no one necessarily above the other. They're all part of it.
yep.
But Ford has taught me how to love in a way that, man, I never could have imagined before I had him. He has shown me joy that is unlike anything that I've ever seen, and it is honest to God. You hear him laugh, you see him experience just joy over the stupidest things, and I'm not personally religious, but it is like the angels singing. It is just
Yeah.
the clouds part and the sun comes down, and it's like, man, that's special. That is special. Uh,
Yeah.
I feel so fortunate to get to see him experience that.
Yeah.
We've talked about empathy, we've talked
Yeah.
about patience, and acknowledging that this is freaking hard, man, and that this is a struggle. This can be a struggle on a day-to-day basis, and that we have to work. Um, not only I think that's true for pretty much all parents, but there's just an extra special kind of level to it, where you have to struggle through your day sometimes to get it done. That's okay. It's worth it. Uh, it's worth it. But acknowledging that it is a part of what's happening is important, because if you don't acknowledge it, if you don't acknowledge that that is a big part of it, then
Mm,
you're not going to give yourself the grace and the self care that you need to. If there's no problem, why would you need to do that for yourself,
mm.
right? So
Yep.
it's important to me to include that one. So it's 5 words.
Oh, that's all right.
I, I you asked an attorney to lock it down to 4 words. I need more words,
You need more words.
obviously.
That's all
Yeah.
right. That's okay. Um, actually, what does Ford love? What's something that if you
Oh
could
man,
something that like it's just like he just loves this. Like,
so many things, but one of the big ones for him is playing pass. It's
interesting, right?
it's just any stupid little ball.
Yeah.
The big one that he has right now is this little neon green football. It's just little tiny, and I guarantee anytime you sit down next to him, you go, "Hey man, what do you want to do? Hey bud, what do you want to do?" He looks at you and goes, "Football, football," and he
That's
starts
cool.
clapping his hand, which is his sign for ball. Um,
Love
and he will
it.
play forever. And
Mm,
he's such a little stinker. He is just mischievous. He will look at you and he gets this little glint in his eye. And no matter where you're standing, that is not where he's going to throw
so you're like, oh,
it.
well, I'm chasing this one.
That's exactly right. And he just starts laughing, and he just thinks it's hilarious. So,
That's great.
yeah, playing ball is a big one. Going on walks, getting out into nature. He loves wind in the trees. He just gets so calm, and he just loves
Mm,
it so much in a way that's really special and unique for him. You'll go on a walk, and you just walk underneath the trees, and he just sits there looking up. He just sits there looking up at the leaves, uh, and it's special. So
mm,
those are two big ones for him, and then I mean family, um, mama, dada,
mm,
Gaga. He has the people that show him love man, he returns it in spades.
Lovely. Um, what let's kind of finish it up here a little bit.
Yeah.
I I don't know what does music play a part in your world, in your life?
It does. It does.
Just so people who can't see can't see you have a big smile on your face as I've said that.
Yeah, yeah. No, I never would have really thought it would have before I had Ford. And this really predates even realizing that there was something, that he was gonna have disability going on throughout him, throughout his life. Um, First night we ever brought him home, uh, I don't know any uh, lullabies or nursery rhymes or anything like that. So I sat him down in his crib and I sang him "Fly Me to the Moon" and "Nature Boy," um, and those were his goodnight songs. And I have sung those every night
Wow.
since. So for the past 6.5 years or so.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
What
So
that's what can you enlighten me on Fly Me to the Moon? This
yeah,
is this is a what who sings the song or who is the song done by? This is
Frank Sinatra.
oh,
Uh,
oh, of course it is. Good old Frankie.
yeah, good old Frankie.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
are they both by Frankie? No.
Nature Boy, I think, has been sung by a lot of different people. I think Nat King Cole is a very popular. That may be the original. I should know this. I sang
You
it
sing
enough.
you sang it for six
Um,
and a half years or
yeah,
so.
exactly. But it's just a song that I kind of grew up listening to, and I knew the words to it, and I think it's a beautiful song. Um, and as I've gone through, if you Google the lyrics to it, man, there are so many lyrics to that song that have such more meaning in Ford's life
Mm,
than I ever would have expected.
mm,
So
that's
that's
cool.
yeah, yeah. So
That
it's
is
it's
great.
a it's a special little thing. It's a
That's
special
awesome.
thing.
I love that because we have a dad's playlist that I Spotify that I put these tracks onto. I put them in, and there's everything in there. And this has actually been a nice addition to them. These two tracks here, because there's
Yeah.
an arrangement from some ACDC tracks that I've put in there.
There we go.
Like it's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll, which I think is a great song. And then all the way to we got some Disney songs in there, and yeah, some country songs, and
There we go.
there's a whole array of them in there. So those who are listening, if you feel like you want to just open your horizons to what us dads listen to, what we get down to is that, and what the kids get down to as well, because that's also sometimes determines a lot what we listen to. Um,
Hmm.
Jamie's a big fan of music. He will we get in the car and he will say like he's saying music. Like we've now worked out what he's saying. He's like music, music, and he points at my phone and I plug it in.
Uh,
But he's he's a little bit fussy with what he wants to listen to. Um,
yep.
and
I get that.
but he keeps like he wants to go to the next track. He'll just be like hitting the the deck in the car, and he's just like, no, no. I'm like, okay, we'll just turn the music off.
Yeah.
But sometimes we listen to the radio. And like, Jamie, it's the radio. We can't change it. And he seems to actually get that. Actually, he's like, okay, all right. So if he knows that it's running through Spotify, like he knows, like he's generally can understand. We can change that song. We can go to the next one. But the radio, no, it's like that's it. um, so music is played. Now I'm
That's
going to ask
awesome.
a typical, not typical question. Actually, that's a wrong way of phrasing it. A question here: what is podcast? Obviously, your wife does an amazing podcast,
Yeah, she does.
and Once Upon a Gene,
Yep.
and we're going to link it all in to the notes here.
Perfect.
Um, Sorry, Abby is taking over the mic here. What is there any? Do you yourself have any podcasts that you kind of want to? You think, oh, I love this. I love this. I listen to this. Or are you not a podcast man? Or what? What's your?
I had never listened to a podcast in my life when Effie said, "Hey, hun, I think I want to start a podcast."
All right.
I mean, I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's a thing. I've heard of it."
Yeah.
And that was yeah, so um I listened to hers. I listened to her episodes especially. I don't necessarily get to listen to every single one of her episodes. But she has episodes, EFF
Right.
ISODE. Anytime that there's an opportunity for a pun, we're all over that. So,
Have you actually been on one yet?
yeah, I've been on a few.
Oh,
I've
you
been
have
on
been
a
off
few.
you. Okay.
Yeah, it's buried in there. Her first, she has this very cool series that she does of just storytelling. Um, and I got to tell a story about Ford and why he's a hero to me, and that was pretty special to me.
Mm,
And just a couple of other times I've gotten to be on there, which I feel pretty fortunate about.
that's cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. No, Effie is amazing.
Yeah.
She's a hairstylist. No training in public speaking, no training in podcasts, and she just said, "This is important, and I want to do it," and she did it. That was
Yeah.
unbelievable.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So good. So good. So good. Oh man. Well, Abby clearly wants to get on the action here. Abby is our dog, by the way. Those
Yeah.
who are listening, who are wondering who the heck is Abby, she's our Cavalier King Charles Spaniel, which has been very interactive with our lesson, our podcast today. All right, Casey. Thank you very much for sharing your dad journey with us today, and it's been really, really good to hear and for you to kind of for us to hear, sorry, how you have gone, what you have gone through, and how you have analyzed how you felt, how you are feeling. I think it's great. It's really important to hear these things because and I really hope that dads out there can take away things from our talk today. Because and I'm sure they will. And I always listen back and always like, yeah, that's so. Sometimes I do miss things as I'm doing it, But yeah, amazing. Thank you very much, Casey, for coming on and making time. It's been great.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Steve. I really appreciate it, and thank you for doing this podcast. I do think it's really important.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Casey. Thank you very, very much.